Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second season of the podcast. I'm Victoria, and today I'm delighted to be joined by the Hirsch family, two generations of EjM alumni, Charles-Henri Hirsch and his children, Anne-France, Elisabeth, and Alexandre. You're listening to the Anxious Scholar Podcast, a podcast for anxious scholars. If you're a high school student who can't wait to go to university, but also is kind of overwhelmed with lots of unanswered questions like me, then you've definitely come to the right place. On this podcast, I sit down with EJM alumni while they share valuable advice from this exciting journey of theirs that we have yet to take. I really hope you'll enjoy this episode and learn lots of useful information about the college application process, unis, and higher education in general.
My name is Alexandre Hirsch. I was born in France, but I spent most of my childhood in Russia until I was 8 years old. And then from 8 to 18, I was at EJM. And I graduated in 2018, Bac S. And then I did a bachelor's degree at École Polytechnique in mathematics and computer science. And then I did a master's degree also at Polytechnique in artificial intelligence and visual computing. I speak French and English fluently, Russian almost fluently, not perfect. Spanish I did a little bit in high school, so I remember bits of it, and it's an easy language to pick up when you have French and English, so I would say intermediate. But I also did Mandarin in high school, until the end of high school. Then I didn't do it so much after, so I forgot a lot of it, and it's not easy anyway, so it's easy to forget. But I did the HSK3 and I think 4e, 3e, something like that. So at the time I knew 300 words, but since then not much. But yeah, and professionally right now, so I just finished my internship. Almost finished. This week is the last week, and now I'm going to take a short break, and then I'm going to apply for jobs in Paris in the field of AI and maybe education, maybe medical. I'm a bit broad in the specific applications of AI, but I think there's a lot of interesting things to do in those areas.
So you just mentioned the internship that you have just completed at Evidence B, a company that develops AI-based adaptive learning solutions. So we'll talk about this later in the interview. But first, I wanted to ask you about your university experience and your time before in high school. So you've just completed your bachelor and master's at Polytechnique, so congratulations.
Thank you.
In this interview, I really wanted to unveil for the younger audience that are listening to us who are still in high school, the steps of the yellow brick road that you have put out and they led you to this path, to give us an idea of what it takes to get to where you're now. So, for example, you received the Princeton Book Award for secondary school back in EJM. Could you tell us a little bit about what it is? Who receives it? Is it specific to one subject?
So the Princeton Book Award, I got it in première, so it was given to one student every year. And it was given to students, I believe, who showed academic promise and just extra willingness to accomplish goals, I guess. So I got it that year, and the award itself is a book, and the book I got was Understanding the Digital World by Brian Kernighan, who's a pioneer in computer science. He's one of the first people to write a programming textbook on the C programming language, which is used almost everywhere. And any new major programming language is a kind of a derivation of the C programming language. So he's a very important figure in the programming history of computer science. So it was very great to receive this book. He also wrote me a short letter to to congratulate me on this award. And
you also mentioned that you did the student council in première and terminale. Could you tell us a little bit about what you did, how it was back then?
So I was in the student council, yes, in première terminale with Arthur Bessis. We were both elected, and it was for 2 years. It was the first year of the student council, first 2 years of the student council. So the goals of the council and its projects and its aims were a bit rough. Like the ideas were being put in place during our time there, and there were some committees that had been created at that time already to deal with specific issues or improvements that could be made. But one big thing that we worked on during our 2 years was we made this very long survey, a very detailed survey for students of all ages at EjM to answer about mental health and pressure issues that they experienced at the school, to get a clear idea of where the issues were. And we had some discussions about the results of this survey. They were shared with everyone. And I think overall it was a very helpful project for the students and the school and the parents also. And small committees, and that was most of what we did, yeah.
And later in Polytechnique, you also represented your grade, the undergraduate students, on the board of directions of Polytechnique. There, what were your responsibilities? What kind of projects did you accomplish during that time?
So the board of director of Polytechnique, it's all the directors, quote unquote, of Polytechnique. It's composed of mainly the big heads of the school, but also people from outside the school who have a deep link with the school itself. So it's some CEOs of big companies like Total, BlaBlaCar, and some others. And the point, it's the biggest meeting of the school. It's where the biggest decisions are taken. And during my time there, I was a representative of the bachelor program. So while I was second year, I was representing all 3 years. The bachelor back then, I think the year I was representing, because it was so new, I'm the second promotion of the bachelor overall. So it was a very recent program. So they hadn't established a voting a vote for the bachelor. We were just there to represent and to voice any extra concerns that we had. So I did not have the power at the time to affect change, but I had the power to communicate major issues that the bachelor had. But during my time on the council, it was very tumultuous because there were 2 big events. The main one was COVID. It was during when COVID happened, so there were so many things to take care of because of that. And then another big event, which actually the bachelor program kind of participated in, was a protest against the school's decision to build a center of research by Total, who was notorious for because they're involved with petrol and they release a lot of greenhouse emissions, and there was some protest because of the image of having that company as the first representative of research on the campus, and that was a big issue for a lot of the Polytechnician students of all programs, including mine. So I voiced their concerns. I was very neutral, but I voiced all the concerns that were had about that, and so that was a very big issue to deal with. And overall, some bachelor issues, some bachelor improvement suggestions that I personally had. I remember I didn't at the time I proposed them. They were not ready to be heard. But I heard that in the next 2 years after I left the program, they applied some of the measures I was talking about. So it's important, I guess, at some point to start talking about things, even if they shut down immediately. At least the important thing is to start being heard at some point. So so people know that this is something that is real to some people and that needs to be solved eventually.
In high school, you have also done summer programs several times. What did you find was beneficial in these experiences?
So the Johns Hopkins summer camp, the Johns Hopkins Center for Talented Youth, it was called. I heard about it through a friend who had done it the summer before, and I found it very interesting, and I wanted to do a summer camp, and I was interested in a lot of different sciences and mathematics, and I did it 2014, 2015, 2016, 3 different subjects each time. And every time it was very interesting, very good professors and very good people to study with. The first year was electrical engineering, then I did game theory, and then I did computer science. And electrical engineering helped me a lot because I basically learned the entire physics program of the following years I had in high school, so I had very good grades in those after that. And game theory, which is the science behind all kinds of games, which is used a lot in economics, and it's a very good thinking practice, I guess. And I haven't done a lot of it since, but it's a very interesting subject to study. And computer science, of course, helped me a lot. It was my first real exposure to computer science, and that's one of the reasons why I went on to study computer science after that. It was very helpful. And so those were summer camps during middle school and high school. But then the Columbia thing was a semester abroad that I did. Well, it was supposed to be a semester abroad. It was ended up just being exchange semester without being abroad, because what happened is it was again the year of COVID. So I obtained my visa, but a week after obtaining the visa, it was decided that all new F1 students, F1 visa students, their visa were canceled. So I couldn't go anymore. But I wanted to do. I wanted to be exposed to different teaching methods than the ones I had at École Polytechnique. So I ended up doing it online anyways, and so it was a bit of a time difference. But I did not care because I liked the courses as they were and the professors there, and it was also the opportunity for me to take courses I would never be able to take at Polytechnique. For instance, there was a course on the history of cinema, which I found very interesting, and I discovered so many things, and it was and that and other courses were very helpful and very interesting to me. And I always wanted to do wanted to be exposed to teaching styles and you know, anything that has to do with how you're taught something elsewhere from where you would do it usually, elsewhere from home, elsewhere from your home country. And I got the ability to do that with these summer camps and the semester abroad, and also with my internship last year in Singapore. So I find it very beneficial and very interesting for anyone who has the opportunity to do so, because you're, in the end, you always gain something from having a different perspective on how to be taught something. And this is something also that I find very important, because I myself, I'm a private mathematics tutor, so I see students that have problems with how they are taught mathematics, and it's 90% of the time not that they don't understand, it's that they're being told the problem in the wrong way, and they're not having enough opportunities to see the problem in a different way. And this is something also that my company that I work in deals with. That's the point of adaptive learning, is to adapt to how the student really learns, and to find the best pedagogical path for every student. So yeah, as you can see, like all the choices I did kind of led me down to where I am today with the jobs that I'm in, and I think it's very important to have these experiences and learn from them.
And as someone, like you said, who looked at over both of the paths, so the Prépa and the bachelor, before choosing, you have a clear idea of, what it takes to get into Polytechnique through a Prépa. What does it really take? Do you have to be the best in your class? Like you said, you have to really be resistant to the pressure that other people put on you.
So in the Prépa, well, I personally, I don't know myself the experience. I just know what I've been described from my father when he did it long ago, and I don't have many friends from EjM who did Prépa, so I don't know their perspective. But from the few people I knew that did Prépa that I met at Polytechnique, they were extremely rigorous. It's 2 years of really intense work and no real opportunities to do anything other than study, which is fine for some people, but not for everyone. And it's, for some reason, that seems to be the common thinking for how a lot of things should be studied in France. So they do the Prépa for mathematics, for economics, for even the medical studies are very similar to Prépa, if not worse, I think. And everything's changing slightly. And I have a lot of issues with the Prépa system beyond just the principle of what it is. It's also how it ends up working. There's a lot of issues that are being solved by people that shouldn't be solved the issue. So for example, one big issue is that the Prépa system is supposed to be extremely fair and well distributed across France, but what ends up happening is that a lot of good students and good professors come to a Parisian Prépa and Prépa from the Région Parisienne. So you end up having like in one region, one entire department, you would have only one student that would go to Polytechnique, whereas it should be a bit more even across. There are more people in the Région Parisienne, but it's way overrepresented compared to other regions. So that's one issue, and of course that brings in that's the geographical how would you say inequality, but that brings in also social inequality, because of course in French in Parisian prépas you would have people from more wealthy backgrounds that could help someone on their way in a prépa faster than that could provide them with a much better environment to study in a prépa. And and the problem is that the people that are trying to solve the issue is the grande école like Polytechnique and so many others, but really I think they're solving an issue that they're forced to solve because no one else is solving it. So I think the Prépa has many issues in the principle of what it is and also in how it's applied, and I think more people should be looking into solving those problems.
Like the government.
So the government, French education, whoever is concerned with it. And in any case, there are so many changes happening to education all the time. There's also the bac that is being changed all the time. So at some point they're going to have to change the system anyways, because even the French bac has loosened up a lot and removed the rigidity of having 3 specific fields, S, ES, L, as we had. It was something different before that, but now it's something more similar to the IB or to A levels, where you would still be required to take specific courses to enter in specific unis, but at least you get somewhat the freedom. Well, it's a choice. Maybe it's an illusion of choice, but at least you get to have a tiny bit of freedom that allows you to be interested in what you're doing. Otherwise, it's just at the end of troisième you asked, or seconde you asked, all right, which one is it, S, ES, L, and then that's it. You don't get to choose anything else. So I think it gives students more motivation, more power in what they do, and that's something that the French education system is sometimes allergic to, but I think we're moving towards the right direction. I just wish it was a bit faster and a bit more effective in like decisions, if they could be you know, like better. It's not easy to change the whole education system, but I think for now, it's the changes are interesting enough, and I think we'll just see if that works in the years to come. But yeah, so the Prépa, I think, is some people don't really accept criticism of it because that's how they studied, and that's really how they in some cases it's what made them who they are, because it's really a test of strength to do that for 2 years, sometimes 3, a strength mentally and mentally in all the senses of you just having to do math all the time and also to survive the pressure of it. So I think it's not the only way to do mathematics, and in fact I think before forcing people to do so much math at that point in life, I think there should be a better mathematical education before that in high school, because that is one issue that is happening in France, is that it pretends to have a very good education system, but you look at the rankings internationally and they don't rank low, but they rank much lower than they did before. So and that has coincided a little bit with how they teach mathematics in schools. It used to be a lot more complicated, but it was rooted in very concrete. Like the way it was taught was more was maybe a bit more narrow. It was not open to all the different developments of mathematics, but it was teaching in a very concentrated way. And the thing is, I think what we changed it to is not necessarily better. It's supposed to, and that's the problem with the mathematics and the physics education in high school. So I think before having to have to go to Prépa because maybe your high school wasn't good enough, and well, you have to be good enough to enter Prépa, but Prépa is what makes and breaks you. I think we need to disabuse ourselves of that notion that it's not the Prépa that makes you, and I think it should be a bit more of your childhood, of when you're growing up and how you are until 18 years old. So I think there just needs to be a more understanding that there's more than one way to learn something, specifically mathematics, and it doesn't involve hammering it into people's brains for 2 years. But you can do it more calmer. There are some famous physicists and mathematicians, well, physicists specifically, that were good in physics, but they didn't really like mathematics. But it doesn't mean that they weren't bad at it, of course, but it just shows that you don't have to be perfect and it's not also, it doesn't even mean you're going to be good at it for your whole life. Of course, people in Prépa, they're very good at it for 2 years, and then for the 2-3 years that follow it, when they're studying in their grande école. But after that, it's the thing is that engineering students in France are very required because of their abilities, but they are not going to do the math that they've been doing for 5 years. They're going to do a bit of the math that they've done, and that's the majority of them. And so I think it is kind of stupid to hammer something in such a short time, and to me it seems just like not the only way to be taught. So yeah, that's my big issue with the Prépa. But then if people choose to do it, it's fine, but I think there needs to be more understanding that it's not the only path.
More options for
more
people
options needs to be given.
Prépa wouldn't be the perfect choice.
There needs to be more paths to any point in education, and that's the case in a lot of international institutions. You look at the PhD students in some of the big universities in the US, and they're majoritarily not American, they're from everywhere around the world. They got there through a lot of different paths. And that's what needs to be understood way more in France. It's not understood at all. So the Bachelor of Polytechnique is a very good first step in that direction, and I think it's the perfect bridge for people like EjM and people from not EjM, so not as internationally, not international students, you know.
Drawing from your 5-year experience at Polytechnique, would you say you had more freedom than, for example, in a Prépa, in terms of your time there, your schedule, the opportunity maybe to engage in other activities, like you said, like sports and hobbies? I know there's a very big campus there and many facilities for that. Also, maybe in the way that they teach, how would you describe the environment there? Is it more French or American in the way that they teach? Is there a lot of office hours, opportunities to engage with the teachers also?
So the campus at Polytechnique is, first of all, it's a bit far away from Paris. It's 20 kilometers down south, and so it is in a bit of a remote area, but it's quite big. So there's indeed, as you said, there's a lot of sports installations, so that's very good for everyone really, because it's of course Polytechnique is a military school first, so it's all of the Polytechnician students are required to be part of military. They have to do a military internship in the first year, and then they have military exercises here and there during the 2-3 years that follow. Then the students from other programs like the bachelor and the master, it's not a pure requirement that we be in military shape, but we are given the chance to have a few hours of sports every week. So and I think I did some basketball, swimming, I did some fitness and boxing, I think, for 1 year. Yeah. So in general, the campus is very big. It's a bit old in its style, but there are a lot of constructions on it to have the new buildings, so both research centers and accommodations for students. When I was there, we the bachelors, we were still living in some old Polytechnicien accommodations because the new bachelor building was being built. Now it's completely done, and it's going to house all, I think, maximum 500 total bachelor students in total. So and I've been there. It's a very, very good building, very modern. Otherwise, the courses, we had a lot of courses, so it's quite intensive still as a course. We had few choices for them, but some choices that we had in first year, for example, allowed us to solidify our commitment to one specific double major at the end of the year. So yeah, we had about 35 hours of class, I think, per week, and it was half lectures, half how do you call it in English? Travaux dirigés, TD classes. It's where you get
assignments.
Yeah, basically you work on exercises based on what you saw in the lecture, and so that's very good because that means that you would have you would be seeing in the morning something, and in the afternoon you would be doing exercises over that very thing. So the knowledge would come in very fast, and that meant that we spent a lot of our time in the classroom already having really internalized the topics and the chapters that we had. So it meant that I think compared to other courses in similar universities, had a bit less, not less effort or time to do at home, but definitely less effort to do so, because we just were given access to a lot of time to understand the topics. And so because of that, we did have some office hours, but I don't think most students use them anyways, because first of all, they were all very good students anyway, so they understood things quite quickly. But as I said, the TD hours were already very helpful, and there were just a few students that needed some extra help from professors, and they were given that. But in general, the program was designed in a way that it didn't even need that many office hours to begin with. And of course, students that wanted to go deeper on the subject were talking to professors, and they were finding opportunities for internships and for summer programs and studies abroad, and also just general professional experience that came after that. When I was there, I was a second promotion. We were around 70 total in the year, and we were divided in 4 groups, so it was a bit less than 20. And so each group, we had a TD session with one professor, so that's a bit less than 20 students. And we had like 2 hours for each, 2 hours of lecture, then 2 hours of a TD session with another professor. So we were constantly exercising and doing exercises and having access to a lot of people to talk to. So there was the professor that was teaching us, but also the person in charge of the TD session. And usually they were a bit younger and a bit more understanding of difficulty to understand the subject. So we had 35 hours. Yeah, we did finish, I think, around 6 sometimes. I think 5, 6 every day. But we did not have any day where we felt like we hadn't done anything. It was all very intense. Every time there was things to understand, and it was important not to slack off too much. But as I said, even if you did, there was the education system was made in a way so that everyone was given the same first 2 hours to understand every topic. So I think there was a very good system, and it helped me a lot, and I think it should be like that in general. And I think if a reform like that needs to be had for courses in high school, then I think it should be like that, where you never have a day where you had exercises on a topic without being lectured on it, or you have a lecture without having exercises on it. I think it's a very important thing, and that's one thing I have to say about one of my favorite teachers that I'll talk about after when you ask me.
You mentioned professional opportunities during your time at Polytechnique. For example, you've had that. You were a graduate assistant, research assistant in Singapore. Is this something that Polytechnique offered as an internship, and what is it that you did there?
So I did, at Polytechnique in total, I did 3 internships, and they were all required parts of my studies, but they were all very helpful, and I think they were diverse enough and quite helpful. So the first one I did, just to mention, was it was much shorter. It was just 2 months, and it was in a research laboratory called INRIA, where I worked on. There was a chatbot that was used for the OECD to get specific statistics that were available in all the national and international statistics institutions, and the objective was to have something that could be used in a variety of contexts, but that could analyze statistics that are written in text or in dialogues between people, and that could be used in a lot of things such as fact-checking. So when someone mentions a statistic and it's mentioned in passing in a conversation, there could be a way to instantly check that, and that involved breaking down a meaning of a sentence and then transforming that into an understandable request for information available on different servers. So that's what I did the first internship. The second internship was in Singapore, as you mentioned. It was around computer vision, and it was based on a multitude of I was specifically working on one of many different capabilities of a visual tracking pipeline that was developed by Facebook and a lot of different research institutions and other big research companies. And the idea was to have tracking an object within a video. When you were shown the object again and asked where did the object that looked exactly like this, when was it last seen, to find the exact moment in time where it was found, and from that point on also calculate the displacement vector from where that object was last seen and where you were when you asked the question. So it could tell you, oh, I last saw this phone that you're asking for 5 minutes ago, and it's exactly right there. So I worked a little bit on bits of what the algorithm was doing, and it was a very interesting project, and that was in a big research institution in Singapore called A*STAR, and it was also in collaboration with the CNRS that is based in Singapore. It's the CNRS for all Asia, but it's specifically based in Singapore. So that was the internship last year, and then this year at Évidence B in Paris.
And would you be more interested to work in visual computing or the natural language processing, large language models that you've both had experience with?
It's a very interesting question. They're both fields growing rapidly, and they're actually growing rapidly exactly at the same rate, because what's happening, to get a bit technical in AI in general, is that there were a lot of different fields that were considered, there were a lot of different subfields in AI that were separate because of how the data was presented and how much computations would have to be made and how the computations looked like. And it was all inherent to the nature of the data. The text is one-dimensional. You go from one letter to the next, one word to the next in two directions, so either forward, backward. So that's very simple. It's a very simple form of data. Vision, so imagery and videos, is an image is two-dimensional because it's one image where you can go up, down, left, right, and you have different values of pixels everywhere. But for videos, you also have to go forward and backward in time. So that's like a third dimension. And then also, of course, that is without counting the third dimension that you can reconstruct from a bunch of videos. When you're looking at things in a panorama, you can reconstruct an object in 3D space from that. So there's a bunch of different things. And anyways, so these informations were organized very differently, and they had different people working on different ways to analyze this data and to perform like all the tasks that we would want to have from that. So from computer vision, you would have object detection, segmentation, all sorts of tracking algorithms, and also after that came generative algorithms to create images, and then for natural language processing, that developed in one specific way, which was very simple compared to the computer vision models. And then what happened is that we realized, specifically for generative data, so for NLP, for text and for vision, we noticed that we could actually use one big model to do both. And that's exactly what's happening, the recent revolution in the last year, with algorithms such as ChatGPT. Right now it's only using text, but the model it's based on, it's transformer based, And that the transformer model was first developed, I think, by Google. And right now you have transformers used for computer vision problems, computer vision tasks, and for NLP tasks. And what's happening also is that in the end, now you're having sometimes the ability to have as input text or image, and to have as output also either text or image. And what's interesting in that is that it's a larger debate in what AI really is that people have this vision of AI that it can take over and do everything for you. And that's happening, it's kind of happening in the sense that it's getting close to that, but it will never really get there, because there are a bunch of, there is always limitations to AI. The fact is, today, computer vision and NLP are moving at the same rate to do not necessarily the same things, but I think what I'm most interested in is, I'm interested in, as you can see from my path, like different perspectives on education. And one perspective on education is that it should be all in textbooks, should all be written. One perspective is that you should be given examples. It's a bit, the truth as always is a bit in the middle. So I'm really interested in finding ways that can help, that can be used as an aid for teachers to accelerate understanding of a student. So I'm interested in both fields, and for education, but also for medical, for everything business related also. So I think I can't make a choice today on what I prefer between computer vision and NLP.
Mm-hmm. But you hope that it will be, combined, and you would be able to.
It will be. It's being worked on. It's being worked on at the same time, and it's going to be everywhere coming soon. And that's another discussion to have about where it shouldn't be. But that's one thing I'd like to mention also. At my master's degree, we had weekly conferences that we had to attend to. That were discussions around the ethics of the uses of AI in all kinds of fields, and from all different perspectives. So from people in business, from professors, from PhD students, and there were discussions about what it really means to be an AI and how you generate content, and there are also whole discussions about how that could ever be integrated with a national law or European law. Short answer is it's very complicated. So in the near future, probably not in the 5-10 years. In the next 5-10 years, we could have self-driving cars, but legally we could not. So yeah, so that's a very important aspect of my master's degree, is that that conference we had every week, and I think it's important for people studying AI to get that information, those perspectives. It's also important for people outside of AI, because there's so much misunderstanding about what AI can or can't do. It can only do what we help it to do, and what I see AI as in general is not a good or a bad thing. It's everything. It's a tool. It's like a computer. It's like the calculator that came. It's like a hammer. You can use it to build a door, or you can use it to hit someone. So really all it does is amplify our reach for everything, and it's our responsibility to make sure it doesn't amplify in the wrong direction. And I think there needs to be more optimism about that, because it's not at all as bad as it seems.
And one of the ways it can help society is through education, and that's what the company where you entered specializes in. I think personally it's a very interesting company, and their activity is very relevant in the way that it mirrors real changes happening right now in society. Like, for example, the new digital adaptive SAT that is now online, and that will basically adapt to your answers through the exam that you're taking. So, so could you tell us a little bit about what this company does and personally your responsibilities that you had during the internship?
So the company, it's called Evidence B. They work on adaptive learning solutions. That's the main goal they have, and they have different applications for different subjects. So adaptive, one called adaptive math, adaptive language for languages, one for Latin, and another one for specific things in mathematics. And at the core of the company, in the AI part, there are two main algorithms. One is called ZPDES. It's a multi-arm bandit-based algorithm, which is basically the one that chooses which activity the student should be focusing on next, and which activity he should not be focusing at all anymore. Basically, it is an adaptive learning process that I could explain, but it was not the algorithm I worked on, and even the simplest explanation is a bit complicated. But the gist of it is that you would have a student that is exposed to an area to a challenge level that is always appropriate to his current understanding. So he's almost the thing that is minimized is the time the student spends in the graph that they have, which is the challenge level and the student's current level of knowledge. In the diagonal, if you're on it, you're always being challenged on your current level, so you're not necessarily increasing your knowledge. If you're under it, you're being challenged under your level, which is not ideal also, because that means that you get bored, and that can lead to students be unmotivated, and in the long term it can have actually bad effects, because students could think that, oh, actually if I don't listen to this class, it doesn't matter. So you don't want that. But also, if you go way too high above the diagonal, you are challenging students way over what they know, and that is obviously very bad. That can create some stress, that can create some anxiety, and if you do that too long, that also doesn't motivate the student to study, because he never understands it. So when you're right between the diagonal and the anxiety zone, you're in the learning zone. You're being challenged just above your level of understanding, and you're always learning in that way, because you're not you're not exposed to an environment that is too much different from what you've seen, but it's just different enough for you to adapt to it. And the environment is what you know in mathematics. And the idea, of course, is to expand that for everyone, but to expand it at the appropriate rate for everyone. So that's the first main algorithm. And the second algorithm is a clustering algorithm, which is used to create different groups of students. And it's not necessarily based on their performance in the pure sense, that if they got the question right or not. The idea is to get ideas of learning paths for students. So from the information you get from how they answer questions with as a PDS, you are able to build student profiles. So how long they spent having to exercise in each activity, and how long they take to answer questions, and how sure they seem. That's a complicated metric to see, but it's not necessarily just the speed at which they answer, because they could type something, then remove it, and then change something else. So there was a bit of doubt of that in the beginning, and that doesn't necessarily mean they were worse than someone that typed the thing. It's just that their instinct wasn't quite right there, and so it might be beneficial to put them with someone that also doesn't sometimes have the right instinct. So they learn together from the issue they have. So this is the clustering algorithm on which I worked. It was already developed, but I worked on the process on which you select the parameters for each classroom, on how to process the clustering algorithm. So it's a bit of a complicated thing to explain in simple terms, but basically, if you have different clusters, they're appropriate for a time, but they're not necessarily appropriate for the whole time of the year. So you want it to be, you want the definition of a group to change over time depending on what the students are learning at the same time, at a given time. So the idea is to create clusters at an ideal rate that corresponds with how the program is evolving along the year. And so this is an important thing because it's important to emphasize also it's not meant at all to replace the teachers. It's always intended to be an aid to the teacher for any student they aren't necessarily able to reach or to understand immediately. And this is supposed to help the teacher see what they might not sometimes see. And I think that's one of the best uses of AI, and I think it always comes from a professor helping a lot the student and the AI being there for anything that the professor can't do. Because we humans aren't perfect, but the AI also isn't perfect. So I think the marriage between the two is what needs to be looked into, and that it shouldn't be accepted immediately, it shouldn't be rejected completely, it should be studied the best way to do that together. Because that is what we're moving towards. We're moving towards AI being used as a tool, and as I said, it's important to use it in the right way. So yeah, that's what the gist of Évidence B is about, is adaptive learning solutions along with traditional education, but that is evolving also in its own way. So everything is made to make sure that no one is left on the sidelines.
Do you have a piece of advice you would give to graduating students of EJM who are just finishing high school and embarking on this new journey?
Advice. I think in general, like, of course, there's I would say that you would have to try to do what you want as much as possible. If you can, if you can see a path in your life where you can progress in that field, do that. But also don't be afraid to fail if that happens, because my perspective is when you failed, a lot of the times if you were trying, you did not fail, the system failed you. So all you have to do is find a different way to succeed, and that comes with maybe reevaluating how you were studying or how you were just doing in general. But it should not be at all a symptom of you being bad at what you do if you fail. You just tried once and you failed, and then you try again. If you succeed the second time, that's very good. If you fail again, then you just try a third time a different way. So don't be afraid to fail, and of course, if you do what you want, and if you're passionate about it, and you end up working in that field, of course, there's that famous saying: if you work what you want to work, you'll never really work a day in your life, because you'll find great pleasure in it. And so see what drives you, and don't be afraid to fail in that or elsewhere, really, but focus on what drives you.
And last question, what does success mean to you?
Well, it has to do with that as well. If you're doing something that drives you, if you at the end of the day find that you did something that made you happy because it you advanced a certain topic, you finished a project, you did something, and you enjoyed that project, regardless of what field it is, regardless of how much money you made from it, if you feel satisfied with what you do and you like doing it, you are successful, to me, in my mind. And that's important. That's very important to me. And it's also not easy to say do what drives you, because you don't necessarily sometimes know what drives you, and that you can find it in the most unexpected places. But what does drive me is to help people, and education is one way to do that. And with what I studied, I'm very interested in seeing how people can be helped when they seem helpless, and I just want to be part of if you can call it a revolution, then yes, it's a revolution. If I can be part of the revolution that will help people understand things better, then I will feel very successful. And so just do what you want, do what drives you, find what drives you, and don't be afraid if you don't find it. You will find it eventually. And when you work on what drives you, you are successful.
Thank you, Alexandre. Perfect. Merci. Super. Thank you for tuning in on this episode of the Anxious Scholar podcast. See you in 2 weeks for the next interview, and don't miss out on any additional information on our Instagram @The Anxious Scholar.